Hey everybody, hope you're all doing well. My name is Steven, and this is the Storytime channel. Today we have some malicious compliance stories, and our first story of the day is by Oven Kitten. You'd like me to resign? How about I fire myself from this job instead? Part 1, New Job. This happened about a year ago now, but I still think back to it from time to time and appreciate how well it unfolded. I work in software and took a job at a small to medium-sized software company in 2018. The company was family-owned, and I went high school with the CEO's daughter. The place itself was rampant with nepotism and the company culture wasn't great. Sexist comments and humorous, racist remarks were common, but I needed a job and this was one of the few options I had. My title was project coordinator, but I was quickly relegated to buying lunches for the team and such. At one point when the lottery reached 500 million, the CTO asked me to dress like Randy Savage and get a pool together. I spent a whole day buying lottery tickets. I hated it, but kept thinking if I paid my dues, I'd get a shot at some real work and growth. Eventually, I got a chance to handle recruiting and doing intro calls for new hires. It was brutal, but yet again, I kept pushing through. Part 2, I hate it here. It was a 6-month contract to hire situation, and they made me an offer, which I was able to negotiate from 40k to 55k, which felt like validation finally. Sadly, nothing changed after this. I kept buying lunches and setting up calls that I wouldn't be included in. Around this time, one-to-ones essentially ended for me. What was a monthly cadence with my boss, the CTO, turned to once every 3 months, and finally he had me reporting to the CEO's daughter, who would then conduct my one-to-ones. I was open about my frustrations, and I was promised that in January 2020, they would move me out of hiring. January came and went. Part 3, Mal-compliance. February, and I finally had a meeting with the CTO. I got to his office only to be told that there was no other role for me, and now that we had hired more people, we didn't have a need for my services anymore on the tech team. I pushed harder, and essentially the CEO's daughter didn't have faith in me, and that was that. He politely suggested I resigned, and they'd give me a letter of recommendation. We went back and forth, and he finally mentioned that there was another opening on another team, but he thought that would be a bad role for me. This is where the malicious compliance comes in. He showed all his hands at that point, and I knew I could make this work for me. The next day, I updated my DICE profile, and within 24 hours had 2 interviews set up. I then told him I needed a few days to think things over, and that I was taking personal time off. I went home and waited, watched Nacho Libre, and prepped for interviews. That day, he texted me asking me general work questions. Day 2, he finally broke down and asked over text if I wanted to be let go or resign. He actually wrote that in text form. I told him I was still thinking about the other role and hadn't made a decision. I then had dinner with the founder of the company. The other role was on his team. He was the CEO's husband, and he and I always got along. I laid out everything I went through. That night, I emptied most of my office, and the next day, the CTO called livid, telling me I was handling this the wrong way, and this was making it difficult for them. 2 days later, after using some of my PTO, I walked into the VP of HR's office and told her to fire me. She looked at me confused and said that a manager normally needs to tell her that. I showed her printed out screenshots of our texts and a log of my one-to-ones, citing that if they were firing me for cause, then you'd think this would look more consistent. Fallout. I was fired, and at this point I had a job lined up already. Shutdown hit, and that offer was delayed, but because I was fired, I could claim unemployment. This hit them, and they even tried to claim they gave me severance, but I had all my pay stubs and proved otherwise. The CEO's daughter straight up stopped talking to me, and they ended up giving up their office and moving into a co-working space. I got a job as a legit PM at a Fortune 50 software company. I bought a Lincoln. My life is 100 times better. My parents voted for the first time this year and I went with them. They live close to that co-working space, and with as much salt as possible, I linked up with a few folks I actually liked at the company and they told me to come over. I spent a half day working in the same space as them with the biggest grin on my face. And that's how I left my previous company. As a kid, they tell you you don't get fired. As a kid, they tell you don't get fired. As an adult, sometimes it's the smartest option. Although the pandemic hit, because OP handled it so well, that was pretty awesome that they were able to get unemployment like that. That feels like a 1000 IQ move in retrospect. Let me ask you guys, if you were trying to make it in an industry you had an interest in, would you be willing to put up with being put down so much and grinding through tasks that really have absolutely no relevance to the position you're working towards? Let me know in the comments down below. This next story is by On19. Car dealer shenanigans. My wife is a doc. She's tired of the frequent service visits her Mercedes required and visited an Infiniti store. She was told that she could not drive a Q45 unless I was present. She called me at work, not far from the dealer. Salesman confirmed what she said. We must both be present for the test drive. Idiots. The landscaping crew was doing their thing outside my office, so I decided to employ them in my subterfuge. I changed into my workout clothes, rolled around in the grass, and paid Hector $100 to drive his rusted-out, extended cab pickup and long trailer loaded with mowers, me and his crew, to the dealership. The dealer was located downtown on a postage stamp lot, and there was no place to park the truck and trailer without completely bollocksing their only street entrance and parking lot entry. They said, "Move your truck." I said, "You told me I had to be here for the test drive." "Who are you?" I say, "Her husband. You called me away from mowing the—" "Your piece of crap truck is blocking everything." "Correct." I say, "Are you going to let the nice lady doctor do a test drive?" They folded quickly. She bought the Q45 from a different Infiniti dealer. It's really nice that OP was able to drive it into them how, well, stupid they were being not letting her test drive, and it's especially really nice for them to go and stick it to them even further by going and buying the Q45 somewhere else. Bonus points if they let them know their intentions of doing so. This next story is by Rhubarb314, going along with a sexist car salesman. My wife and I have used the salesman's sexism against him, and it was so satisfying. It was when we bought our first new car. We were nervous that we didn't know what we were doing, so we did a lot of research. It helps that my wife is a librarian. When we got to the dealer, the salesman would only talk to me. I was all buddy-buddy with the guy too, but he completely ignored my wife. We went along. The dealer was running a promotion where they would give you X amount of dollars for your trade-in, no matter what condition. If you can drive it on the lot, kind of deal. Of course, they don't just discount off of MSRP in those cases, so it's a gimmick. When we walked in, the salesman asked which car was ours, parked outside, and then asked if we were trading it in. I said no, we weren't trading that car in. You can see where this is going. As I said, we had done our research and knew what a fair price was for the car we wanted. At the time, Edmunds had detailed dealer-level price information for many new cars, including all the various ways a dealer gets paid and what their true costs are. The invoice price is not their true cost. I negotiated the price, since he wouldn't talk to my wife, and we arrived at a number I thought was fair, actually. We got a good deal at that point. Everything was going smoothly as he wrote up our agreement until he confirmed that we didn't have a trade-in. I said no, we were trading in a car, just not the one we drove into the dealer in. He literally froze for a few seconds looking down at the form, his hand hovering over the page. He asked the make, model, and year of our trade-in, and when I told him, he sputtered and balked. The car we were trading in was on its last legs. I'd had it all during college and it was old before I bought it. It was definitely past its prime. I said, "I thought you were running a promotion where the quality of the trade-in doesn't matter." I asked him if he would have given us a higher price if he knew we had a trade-in. My wife said under her breath, "That's sleazy." He heard as she intended him to. He then tried to renegotiate the price. We knew from our research that if they gave us the price we had already agreed on, and they honored the trade-in deal, that they would be losing money. So we were willing to move a bit, but we wanted to take our time. He was visibly nervous. Every time he tried a new way of asking for a higher price, I would say something like, I understand what you're saying," with a sympathetic look. Then I would look at my wife and she would look back at me and silently shake her head no. I'd then look back at the salesman and shrug and say, "I don't think that's going to work." He was stuck. She was the one standing in the way of him getting out of his predicament, but he hadn't talked to her at all. He had barely even acknowledged her presence. He just couldn't start talking to her now when we were negotiating. Oh, and I even got to use the classic car salesman line, "What do I have to do for you to put me in this car today?" We finally agreed to raise the price to an amount that, after figuring in the trade-in, was what we had thought was their break-even price. We hadn't expected to get that low of a price, and we also got them to install a nice aftermarket sound system. It's the best deal we've ever gotten on a new car. Honestly, we're not the best negotiators individually, but that day we made one heck of a team. The salesman hits you the hardest when you go in not knowing exactly what to do or all the details of what's going to go down. OP teaming up with their wife and going in super prepared to get this car, knowing the prices and everything, it was almost a sure thing that it would work out. They did make one heck of a great team. And our final story of the day is by Future Pink 719. They requested more DVDs. Okay, so another tale from the pawn shop. Backstory: when I was working as a pawnbroker at the most profitable store in my company, we took in a lot of DVDs. Standard pay was 50 cents a DVD, and people would come with boxes, tubs, bags, and at one time an entire bed of a pickup truck stacked. So needless to say, we had a lot of DVDs out for sale and in the back. The reason we paid that low for them was that we didn't discriminate based on popularity or title. It was 50 cents if it was the rarest movie. The rarest movie I've ever heard of was The History of Beavis and Butthead, but that's a story for another time. Or the most common DVD. We also didn't catalog our DVDs, which made searching for them a waste of time. Unless you're me. See, I really loved organizing the DVDs, not because I'm organized. Every time I was helping our customers out on the pawn line, I was also answering the phones. And my coworkers were also helping the customers, but they didn't like answering the phones. So I often volunteered to go clean the messy, unorganized, and dusty DVD area and stop having to answer the phones for a while. And I became very familiar with our inventory. Story: well, my boss, who was rock and roll, got passed for a promotion to district and was very angry about it. But that didn't stop him from doing a kick-butt job. So rock and roll boss, who we'll call Jim, gets a call from corporate saying the new store we just opened needs some DVD inventory and could we send over 200 or so. Jim agrees after asking if we have that many available in backstock. We do, and it won't even put a dent in our collection. At the time, our inventory said we had roughly 6,000 DVDs. So Jim has me go and pick up a random 200 for transfer. I do, because I don't want my fellow brokers screwing up my system. They didn't know how to alphabetize for crap. So I get the 200 and pack them up in a box, wrap the box in cling wrap for security, and they are taken to the new store within an hour. 2 days later, Jim gets a call for another 200. I go do my thing and same as yesterday, taken to the new store. 2 more days pass and another call comes in. Then it happens a 4th time and Jim is annoyed. We've sent them 800 DVDs and we aren't the only store to do so. At the time, our pawn store had 22-ish locations. I'm also annoyed because I'm tired of having to box up DVDs every other day. It was getting old. So 2 more days pass and we get our 5th request, but this time there's an extra bit to the request. Could you include duplicates, please? Some of the DVDs are missing their discs and it's pretty annoying. Jim called me in to read that. See, we didn't check everyone's case for discs when we took them in because I don't have time to go over every case when people are bringing in literal pickup beds worth of DVDs. So when we saw that, we met eyes and grinned. Time for some malicious compliance. What I didn't mention was that of the 6,000 DVDs we had, there was a good solid 1,000 of them that were only 2 titles: Austin Powers Goldmember and The Matrix Reloaded. So I went up to the DVD shelves and packed up only the Matrix DVDs into a box, wrapped it, and sent it on its way. Jim got a call from the new store's manager to thank him because he thought it was hilarious. "But for real, Jim, your brokers are slacking on DVD intake. They need to keep a better eye on DVDs or your guys' numbers will slip." We were the flagship store, and all of our brokers were in the top 10. "Can I get a real box of DVDs now? I still need duplicates." Jim, with the fakest, nicest voice, goes, "Sure, man, we'll send you some more DVDs." He turned to me after he hung up and said the words I want on my gravestone: "Prepare the gold members." I boxed up every single Austin Powers Gold member DVD we had in our store to 200 group boxes, and we sent all of the boxes to their store. The store never asked us for DVDs again. Prepare the gold members. You got it, boss. It's kind of neat to hear about this intertwined multi-pawn shop feud of sorts. It sounds like the plot to a late 90s or early 2000s cult hit film or something like that. The more I think about it, the more it just makes sense. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. So if you have a favorite story of the day, let me know which story and why in the comments down below. But besides that, if you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a like, and if you haven't, subscribe and turn notifications on so you'll never miss an upcoming video. No matter what you do, whether it's just viewing the video, liking, subscribing, turning notifications on, I appreciate the heck out of it. Every little thing that you do helps the channel grow that much more, and I can't thank you enough for it. So until next time, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll be right here next time on the Storytime channel.